The morning sun cast long shadows across the cobblestones of London, as the city awakened to one of the most important days in British history. Westminster Abbey stood majestically against the dawn sky, its ancient stones holding centuries of royal ceremonies within their walls. Today would be different from any other coronation in living memory. Inside Kensington Palace, the Wales family began their morning with unusual quiet. Prince William stood before the mirror, adjusting his ceremonial uniform for the third time. His hands trembled slightly, not from nerves about the crowds or cameras, but from the weight of what this day meant for his family and the nation. Catherine moved gracefully around their private quarters, helping their children prepare for the momentous occasion. Prince George, now old enough to understand the significance of the day, sat perfectly still as his mother smoothed his hair. Princess Charlotte practiced her curtsy one final time, determined to make her parents proud. Little Prince Louis, still young but sensing the importance of the morning, clutched his favorite toy while watching his siblings with wide, curious eyes. The palace staff moved with practiced efficiency, ensuring every detail was perfect. Breakfast was served on the finest china, though none of the family ate much. The children asked questions about what would happen at the Abbey, and William and Catherine answered with gentle patience, explaining traditions that stretched back over 1,000 years. Security teams had been working through the night, checking and rechecking every route between the palace and Westminster Abbey. The streets of London buzzed with excitement as people from around the world gathered along the procession route. Many had camped overnight, wrapped in Union Jack flags and clutching thermoses of hot tea. Catherine's lady-in-waiting arrived with the final touches for her outfit, a stunning ensemble that had been carefully chosen to honor both tradition and modernity. Every piece of jewelry, every accessory had been selected with meaning and purpose. The children's outfits had been tailored to perfection, allowing them to move comfortably while maintaining the dignity expected of young royals. As the family gathered in the drawing room for their final moments of privacy, William took Catherine's hand. They looked at their children, who would soon face the largest crowd of their young lives. The couple exchanged a glance that spoke of shared understanding about the historic nature of this day and their role in it. The sound of horses' hooves on cobblestones could be heard in the distance as the ceremonial carriages arrived at the palace gates. The Diamond Jubilee State Coach, with its modern climate control and hydraulic stabilizers, would carry the family through the streets of London to Westminster Abbey. Palace advisors made final checks of schedules and protocols. Every minute of the day had been planned with military precision, from the exact time they would leave the palace to when they would arrive at the Abbey steps. Nothing could be left to chance on such an important day. The children's excitement began to show despite their careful royal training. George asked his father about the heavy crown that would be placed during the ceremony, while Charlotte wondered about all the people they would meet. Louis simply held his mother's hand, content to be included in this grand family adventure. Outside, the world watched and waited. Television crews from dozens of countries had positioned themselves along the route, ready to capture every moment of the royal family's journey to Westminster Abbey. Social media buzzed with anticipation as people shared their excitement about witnessing history in the making. The final call came from the equerry that it was time to depart. William straightened his shoulders, Catherine smoothed her dress one last time, and they gathered their children. Together, they walked toward the entrance where their carriage waited, ready to begin a journey that would be remembered for generations to come. The palace gates opened with ceremonial grandeur as the Wales family emerged into the morning light. The Diamond Jubilee State Coach gleamed in the sunshine, its golden details catching every ray as if announcing the importance of its passengers. William helped his family into the carriage with careful attention, ensuring Catherine's dress wouldn't wrinkle and that the children were comfortably seated. The moment the carriage began moving, thousands of voices erupted in cheers along the route. People pressed against the barriers, waving flags and holding up phones to capture the historic moment. Children sat on their parents' shoulders for a better view, while elderly spectators wiped tears from their eyes, remembering previous royal occasions they had witnessed. Inside the carriage, the family maintained their composure despite the overwhelming response from the crowds. Catherine pointed out interesting sights to Louis, who pressed his face against the window in wonder at the sea of people. George sat tall, remembering his training about how to wave properly, while Charlotte smiled naturally at the crowds, already showing signs of her future role as a people's princess. The processional route had been carefully planned to showcase London's most beautiful areas. They traveled past historic landmarks, each one holding special significance for the royal family and the nation. The crowds grew thicker as they approached the heart of the city, with people hanging from windows and balconies to catch a glimpse of the family. Royal protection officers maintained perfect formation around the carriage, their eyes constantly scanning the crowds for any unusual activity. The Metropolitan Police had deployed thousands of officers along the route, ensuring the safety of both the royal family and the hundreds of thousands of spectators who had come to witness this historic day. Street vendors sold commemorative items to eager tourists and locals alike. Union Jack bunting stretched across roads, and buildings were decorated with flowers and royal portraits. The atmosphere was festive and celebratory, with people from all walks of life united in their excitement about the coronation ceremony. As the carriage traveled through different neighborhoods, the character of the crowds changed subtly. In some areas, school children lined the streets in their uniforms, waving small flags provided by their teachers. In others, families who had made special trips to London stood together, creating memories that would last lifetimes. The children in the carriage began to relax as they grew accustomed to the attention and noise. William shared quiet words with his family about what they would experience next, preparing them for the solemnity of Westminster Abbey after the celebration of the streets. Catherine helped adjust their posture and reminded them of the protocols they would need to follow. International dignitaries and royal families from around the world had already arrived at Westminster Abbey, creating an unprecedented gathering of global leadership. The guest list read like a directory of world power, with presidents, prime ministers, and monarchs all coming together to witness this historic moment in British history. The Abbey itself had been transformed for the occasion. Thousands of flowers created elaborate arrangements throughout the ancient building, while the lighting had been carefully adjusted to ensure the ceremony would be visible to television cameras, broadcasting to billions of viewers worldwide. The altar area sparkled with ceremonial items that had been used in coronations for centuries. As the carriage approached Parliament Square, the final stretch before Westminster Abbey, the crowds reached their peak density. The noise was almost overwhelming, but the family could see their destination ahead. The Abbey's twin towers rose majestically against the sky, promising the solemnity and tradition that would soon replace the joyful chaos of the streets. Security became even tighter as they neared the Abbey. Sharpshooters on rooftops maintained watchful eyes, while specialized units prepared for the family's arrival at the sacred building, where English monarchs had been crowned for nearly 1,000 years. The carriage began to slow as it approached the Abbey steps, where a red carpet stretched from the street to the great doors. Members of the clergy, government officials, and ceremonial guards stood in perfect formation, ready to receive the royal family and escort them into the building where history would be made. The Diamond Jubilee stagecoach came to a gentle stop at the base of Westminster Abbey's ancient steps. A hush fell over the immediate area as palace officials and ceremonial guards moved into position. William stepped out first, turning to assist Catherine as she emerged with elegant grace, her outfit perfect despite the carriage journey through London's busy streets. The children followed, each one demonstrating the poise they had practiced for months. George moved with the confidence of a future king, while Charlotte's natural charm shone as she took in the magnificent surroundings. Louis, though young, seemed to understand the solemnity of the moment and stayed close to his parents. Westminster Abbey's great doors stood open, revealing the stunning interior that had been prepared for this historic day. Sunlight streamed through the stained glass windows, casting rainbow patterns across the stone floors where kings and queens had walked for nearly a millennium. The ancient building seemed to hold its breath in anticipation of the ceremony about to unfold. The Archbishop of Canterbury waited at the entrance, wearing ceremonial robes that gleamed with gold thread and precious stones. His presence added gravity to the moment, representing centuries of religious tradition that would guide the coronation ceremony. Behind him, senior clergy members formed a dignified procession line. Distinguished guests had been arriving throughout the morning, filling the Abbey with representatives from around the world. European royalty sat alongside elected presidents and prime ministers, creating a unique gathering of global leadership. The guest list represented every continent and countless nations, all united in witnessing this moment in British history. Catherine took William's arm as they began their walk up the red carpet toward the Abbey's entrance. Their children followed in formation, each step carefully measured to maintain the dignity expected of such an occasion. Royal photographers captured every moment, knowing these images would become part of historical record. The interior of Westminster Abbey took everyone's breath away. Thousands of flowers had been arranged throughout the building, creating a garden-like atmosphere within the ancient stone walls. The lighting had been perfectly calibrated to illuminate the ceremony, while preserving the sacred atmosphere that made the Abbey so special. Members of Parliament, Supreme Court justices and military leaders filled the specially constructed seating areas. Everyone wore their finest ceremonial dress, from the colorful robes of university chancellors to the pristine uniforms of military officers. The gathering represented the best of British society and international diplomacy. The royal family made their way down the nave, passing monuments to poets, scientists, and statesmen who had shaped British history. Each step brought them closer to the altar where the coronation ceremony would take place. The children looked around in wonder at the magnificent architecture and the sea of distinguished faces watching there. Progress music began to fill the Abbey as the world-renowned choir prepared for their role in the ceremony. Their voices had been trained for months to ensure perfect acoustics in the challenging stone environment. The organ, one of the finest in the world, added majestic undertones that seemed to make the ancient building vibrate with anticipation. Television cameras positioned throughout the Abbey captured every angle of the procession, broadcasting live to an estimated audience of over 2 billion viewers worldwide. The technical crew had worked for weeks to ensure perfect coverage while remaining invisible to the ceremony participants and in-person guests. As the family approached the altar area, the true magnificence of the coronation setup became apparent. The coronation chair, dating back to 1296, sat ready for the most important moment of the ceremony. Ancient regalia, including crowns, scepters, and orbs that had been used for centuries, gleamed under the Abbey's lights. The children were guided to their specially prepared seats, positioned where they could observe the ceremony while remaining close to their parents. Palace staff had worked extensively with them on protocol, ensuring they would know exactly what to expect during each phase of the coronation service. International television commentators whispered descriptions to their audiences, explaining the significance of every element they witnessed. The ceremony represented not just a national celebration, but a moment when the world's attention focused entirely on this ancient building and the traditions it preserved. The moment had arrived for the coronation ceremony to begin. The Archbishop stepped forward, his voice carrying centuries of authority as he prepared to speak words that would echo through history. The royal family took their positions, ready to participate in a ritual that connected them to over 1,000 years of British monarchy. The coronation ceremony began with ancient words that had echoed through Westminster Abbey for centuries. The Archbishop's voice carried clearly through the sacred space as he commenced the service that would officially crown the new monarch. Every guest, from world leaders to members of the royal household, sat in respectful silence as history unfolded before their eyes. William stood with perfect posture, his ceremonial uniform immaculate under the Abbey's lights. Years of preparation had led to this moment, and his composure reflected the gravity of accepting the crown and all the responsibilities it represented. Catherine sat nearby, her presence providing quiet strength and support during this transformative moment for their family. The children watched with fascination as the ceremony proceeded through its various stages. George, old enough to understand much of what was happening, observed every detail with intense concentration. Charlotte sat beautifully, her natural grace evident even at her young age. Louis, though occasionally fidgeting, remained remarkably well behaved for such a long and formal ceremony. The ancient regalia was presented piece by piece, each item carrying centuries of tradition and symbolic meaning. The imperial state crown, containing over 2,800 diamonds and countless other precious stones, waited for its moment of greatest significance. The sovereign's scepter and the sovereign's orb gleamed under the carefully arranged lighting, representing the authority and responsibility of monarchy. International guests watched with varying degrees of familiarity with British traditions. Some had attended previous royal ceremonies, while others experienced Westminster Abbey's majesty for the first time. The universal language of ceremony and pageantry transcended cultural differences, creating a shared sense of witnessing something truly historic. The choir's voices soared through the abbey as they performed pieces that had been sung at coronations for generations. Their harmonies seemed to lift the ceremony beyond the earthly realm, connecting the present moment with centuries of British royal tradition. The organ's magnificent tones added layers of sound that made the ancient stones seem to sing. Television directors carefully orchestrated their coverage, switching between wide shots that captured the ceremony's grandeur and intimate close-ups that revealed the human emotions underlying this historic moment. Billions of viewers worldwide watched as tradition and modernity merged in this most British of ceremonies. The moment of crowning approached, and the abbey fell into complete silence. The Archbishop lifted the St. Edward's crown, the same crown used for every coronation since 1661. The weight of history seemed to settle over the entire congregation as they prepared to witness the transformation of a prince into a king. Catherine's eyes never left her husband as he prepared for the most significant moment of his life. Their children watched with wonder as their father participated in a ceremony that would change not just his life, but theirs as well. The family unit remained strong even as their public roles evolved in this most public of settings. Security personnel maintained their vigilant watch throughout the ceremony, though their presence remained discreet enough not to disturb the sacred atmosphere. Every exit, entrance, and sightline had been checked and rechecked to ensure the safety of the distinguished gathering and the royal family. The congregation held its collective breath as the Archbishop prepared to place the crown upon William's head. This single action would complete a transformation that had been years in the making, officially beginning a new chapter in British royal history. The children leaned forward slightly, not wanting to miss the pivotal moment of their father's coronation. Photographers captured every angle of the crowning moment, knowing their images would become part of historical record studied by future generations. The play of light on the crown's jewels, the solemnity of the Archbishop's movements, and the dignity of the new monarch all contributed to creating visual documentation of an unrepeatable historic moment. The crown settled upon William's head, and in that instant, he became fully invested with all the powers and responsibilities of the British monarchy. The weight was both literal and metaphorical, representing not just precious metals and stones, but centuries of tradition and the expectations of millions of people around the world. The abbey erupted in the first sounds of celebration as the congregation acknowledged their new monarch. The ceremony was far from over, but this central moment had been completed with the dignity and precision that such an important occasion demanded. History had been made and the royal family had taken their next step into the future together. The coronation ceremony reached its crescendo as the newly crowned King William stood before the congregation, the weight of St. Edward's crown upon his head, symbolizing centuries of monarchy and the responsibility of leadership. The transformation was complete, yet the ceremony continued with traditions that had been followed for nearly 1,000 years. Catherine's own moment of recognition came as she was invested with her new role and responsibilities. The children watched their mother with pride as she accepted the duties that came with being queen consort. Her grace and dignity during the solemn moment reflected the years of preparation that had brought the family to this historic day. The ancient words of homage echoed through Westminster Abbey as members of the royal family. Government officials and representatives of the Commonwealth realms pledged their loyalty to the new monarch. Each oath represented millions of people around the world who would now call William their king, connecting the ceremony to communities across the globe. Prince George, Princess Charlotte, and Prince Louis observed everything with remarkable composure for their ages. The significance of what was happening would shape their entire lives, yet they remained focused and well-behaved throughout the lengthy ceremony. Their parents had prepared them well for this moment that would be remembered throughout their lifetimes. The religious elements of the coronation connected the ceremony to its deepest traditions. Prayers and blessings filled the abbey as the Archbishop invoked divine guidance for the new reign. The sacred nature of the occasion elevated it beyond a mere political ceremony, making it a spiritual commitment between monarch and subjects. International observers noted the seamless blend of ancient tradition with modern sensibilities that characterized this coronation. The ceremony honored every historical precedent while acknowledging the contemporary world in which this new reign would unfold. Television coverage allowed global participation in traditions that had previously been witnessed by only a few hundred people. The presentation of the regalia continued, with each piece carrying its own symbolic meaning and historical significance. The sovereign's scepter represented temporal authority, while the sovereign's orb symbolized the Christian world. Every element had been crafted by the finest artisans of previous centuries, creating tangible links to the past. The choir's performance reached new heights as they sang pieces composed specifically for royal coronations. Their voices filled every corner of Westminster Abbey, creating an atmosphere of celebration that matched the historical importance of the occasion. The music connected this ceremony with every previous coronation while marking the beginning of something entirely new. Distinguished guests from around the world witnessed traditions that many had never seen before. The pageantry and ceremony created lasting impressions that would influence their understanding of British culture and the role of monarchy in the modern world. Diplomatic relationships were strengthened through shared participation in this historic moment. The children's behavior throughout the ceremony impressed everyone present. Their composure and attention during such a lengthy and formal event demonstrated the quality of their upbringing and preparation. They would remember this day for the rest of their lives, and their conduct ensured those memories would be entirely positive. Palace officials and ceremonial experts watched every detail, ensuring that protocols developed over centuries were followed precisely. The coronation represented not just a single ceremony, but the culmination of years of planning and preparation. Every participant knew their role and executed it flawlessly. The moment approached when the new king and queen consort would process out of Westminster Abbey for the first time in their new roles. The return journey to Buckingham Palace would allow the people of London and television audiences worldwide to see their newly crowned monarchs, marking the transition from ceremony to celebration. Security arrangements shifted subtly as the ceremony neared its conclusion. The return procession would be longer and more elaborate than the arrival, allowing maximum public participation in celebrating the coronation. Every detail had been planned to ensure both safety and accessibility for the millions who wanted to participate. The Abbey's bells prepared to ring out across London, their ancient voices ready to announce the successful completion of the coronation ceremony. Church bells throughout the kingdom would join in the celebration, creating a nationwide chorus of joy and recognition for the beginning of a new reign. As the formal ceremony concluded, the royal family prepared for their emergence from Westminster Abbey as transformed individuals. They had entered as prince and princess. They would leave as king and queen, ready to begin the next chapter of British royal history with their children beside them. The great doors of Westminster Abbey opened to reveal the newly crowned King William and Queen Catherine, emerging into the London afternoon as transformed individuals ready to begin their reign. The children followed closely, their composure throughout the lengthy ceremony having impressed everyone present. The sight of the complete royal family stepping into their new roles created a moment of pure magic for the thousands gathered outside. The Gold State coach awaited them, its elaborate decorations glinting in the sunlight. This magnificent vehicle, used only for the most important state occasions, would carry the family back to Buckingham Palace through streets lined with celebrating crowds. The contrast between their arrival in the Diamond, Jubilee Stagecoach and their departure in this ceremonial masterpiece symbolized their transformation during the coronation ceremony. London exploded in celebration as the newly crowned monarchs appeared on the Abbey steps. Church bells rang out across the city, their ancient voices joined by cheers from hundreds of thousands of people who had waited patiently for this moment. The sound was overwhelming, a wall of joy and celebration that seemed to shake the very foundations of the historic building. The children's faces showed wonder at the scale of celebration surrounding them. Prince George walked with new awareness of his future role, while Princess Charlotte smiled naturally at the crowds, already showing signs of the public connection that would serve her well throughout her life. Prince Louis held his parents' hands, secure in their presence despite the overwhelming noise and excitement. The return procession began with military precision, but the atmosphere was entirely different from their morning journey. Now the crowds knew they were seeing their new king and queen, and the celebration reflected that knowledge. Confetti fell from windows, bands played patriotic songs, and people waved flags with renewed enthusiasm. International media captured every moment of the return journey, broadcasting images of celebration around the world. The successful completion of the coronation ceremony meant that Britain had smoothly transitioned to a new reign, providing stability and continuity that would reassure allies and trading partners globally. The Gold State coach moved slowly through the streets, allowing maximum opportunity for public participation in the celebration. The newly crowned king and queen waved to their subjects, while their children experienced their first taste of the adoration that would follow them throughout their lives. Each neighborhood they passed through had its own character of celebration. Buckingham Palace came into view, its facade decorated with flowers and banners for the coronation celebration. The balcony where the family would make their traditional appearance had been prepared for what would be one of the most photographed moments in royal history. Palace staff stood ready to facilitate the smooth transition from procession to balcony appearance. The crowds in front of Buckingham Palace had reached incredible density, with people packed from the Victoria Memorial to the furthest points where the palace was visible. Many had been waiting since before dawn for this moment, and their patience was about to be rewarded with the sight of their new monarchs appearing on the famous balcony. The Gold State coach entered the palace grounds through gates lined with ceremonial guards. The transformation of the morning's nervous family into confident monarchs was complete, and their first official duty would be acknowledging the thousands of well-wishers gathered outside their new official. Residence palace officials moved with practiced efficiency to prepare the family for their balcony appearance. The children needed final adjustments to their outfits, while the king and queen prepared themselves for what would be their first public appearance as crowned monarchs. The weight of their new responsibilities was balanced by the support of their family unit. The famous balcony doors opened, and the crowd's roar reached new levels of excitement. The newly crowned King William and Queen Catherine stepped forward, their children beside them to acknowledge the celebration of their subjects. The moment crystallized everything that had led to this day and everything that would follow. Photographers captured the iconic image that would define this reign's beginning. The family stood together against the backdrop of London in celebration, their faces showing both the dignity of their new roles and the humanity that would make them beloved by their subjects. This single image would be remembered for generations. As the sun began to set over London, the coronation day reached its conclusion. The ancient ceremony had been completed flawlessly. The public celebration had been magnificent, and the royal family had successfully transitioned into their new roles. The day that had begun with nervous preparation had ended with confident monarchs ready to serve their people and lead their nation into the future. The bells of London continued ringing as evening approached, their voices carrying across a city transformed by celebration into a living symbol of continuity, tradition, and hope for the future. The coronation that would be remembered had concluded successfully, marking the beginning of a new chapter in the long story of British monarchy.